After the mess that was Hitman Absolution, me and many others thought that the Hitman series was over. With the negative reception and the lack of sales the game got, it wasn't looking very good for the Hitman series, and me and many others thought that Absolution might be the end of Hitman. But luckily, IO Interactive wasn't done with Hitman just yet, and 4 years later, after Hitman Absolution, IO Interactive announced Hitman 2016 to be the soft reboot of sorts, but also the continuation of the Hitman franchise. Every Hitman fan was skeptical because of what IO Interactive did with Hitman Absolution. It was even more worrying because IO Interactive announced that Hitman 2016 would have an episodic structure to it, with them releasing new maps every month or so. So with all of that, fans were hyped for a new Hitman release, but also very skeptical as well. But IO Interactive knew what they were doing, since we got one of, if not the best Hitman game with Hitman 2016. After the dreaded release of Hitman Absolution, I think IO Interactive knew what they needed, a fresh start. So early on in development, they knew that the next Hitman game would be a soft reboot of sorts. And with the team at IO Interactive brainstormed ideas for the next entry in the franchise, they wanted this game to be a soft reboot but also be the sequel to Hitman Blood Money everybody always wanted. IO Interactive also wanted Hitman to release their maps in an episodic nature. That was a bad move on IO Interactive's part, since when Hitman 2016 finally released, fans and critics all over the world loved and praised the game to death and thought it was a return to form for the Hitman franchise. But the game didn't do well financially, with people not buying the game since they didn't think they were getting a complete package, since this game's content came out episodically. Hitman 2016 looks great, which isn't a surprise. Even people that hated Hitman Absolution admitted how good the graphics were, even back then. So it's not a surprise that Hitman 2016 looks spectacular. IO Interactive made sure to add every single detail they wanted to make the game look as good as ever, like lines on Agent 47's face, reflections from light and heat coming off of a candle. The cutscenes in Hitman look out of this world. The facial animations, the lighting, and the camera work look spectacular, and it's astonishing that this game was made in 2016. Sadly, the style of the cutscenes will not transition into Hitman 2. The maps in Hitman look amazing. The prologue levels look stunning, but they're very small and condensed since they're tutorial levels. You don't really appreciate the graphics in the maps until you visit the Paris map and go to this fashion show in a giant palace, and it looks stunning. The decorations look amazing, the colors in the level look great, and the weather looks almost lifelike. It's spectacular. The next map is set in a small town in Sapienza, which also looks amazing and has that Thailand vibe to it. The shops, the NPCs, and the weather all feels dynamic and real. The next map is in Marrakesh, and this map's color palette is different from Paris and Sapienza. With them having colorful and vibrant aesthetics, Marrakesh has a dark and grainy color palette, with gray and green being the main colors. We then have Bangkok, which looks great, with the map going back to the more colorful color palette from Paris and Sapienza, but it has a more orange tint to all the colors, which I find pretty cool. This map's design is also very similar to the Paris and Sapienza maps, with the main point of interest being the target's whereabouts, but there's still room for you to do your own exploring. So this map is great overall with a great color palette. We then have Colorado. The environments for this map look great, with the sunset weather looking stunning and the trees having more realistic movements, but the interiors for this map aren't so good. They're really basic, don't really add anything to the map. But the final map is probably the most unique of them all, which is in Hokkaido. This map looks the most unique since it's the only map with snow, and it's also set in Japan, which changes the interiors, clothes, and designs. Overall, all the maps look amazing in their own way, which shows how much effort IO Interactive made in making the maps look good and making them have immense detail. The user interface in Hitman is simple and organized, with just the mission objectives and the minimap on your screen. The voice acting acting is honestly not too good here, which is pretty disappointing. For one, there's an over-reliance on a couple actors. Like seriously, half of the male NPCs are voiced by the same 2 or 3 male actors, and it's vice versa for the girl actors as well. And it's obvious, and it breaks your immersion at times, but the key voice actors do a good enough job, like Jane Perry as Diana Burnwood, and obviously David Batson as Agent 47. The soundtrack for Hitman is amazing, and this also isn't a surprise. Basically every Hitman game, including Absolution, has an amazing soundtrack, and this started with Hitman Silent Assassin. And I think the best theme for me in this game is when completing a mission. That triumphant theme they use really makes you feel like a Hitman when completing any mission. But now let's move on to the Hitman's iconic gameplay. The main appeal for Hitman is the variety of ways you can assassinate your target. So I'm glad IO Interactive made a ton of ways for Agent 47 to kill his targets. You can poison your target, drown your target, push your target off the edge, pull your target off the edge, shooting your target, snapping the target's neck, sniping the target, and much more. And some of the ways you assassinate your targets are just straight up brutal. There's also several storylines and missions you can do to kill your targets differently or get more information about your target, which is pretty cool. The gunplay in Hitman is alright at best, and I think IO Interactive knows this since they strongly advise you to not use guns in missions. The gunplay isn't too good here because the aiming system isn't too good, and Agent 47 dies so fast from shots that it's not worth it to go in guns blazing unless you're doing a challenge or something like that. The guns themselves are good though, with a large variety of guns at your disposal. I also like how you have to earn a gun if you want it. For example, if you want a shotgun, you're most likely have to find a guard, knock out the guard, hide his body, and then take his shotgun, all without getting caught, really making you earn for the gun you want. But the downside is that you can't keep any of the guns you got from the previous mission, making the earning system not really work too well. There's also a weapon wheel letting you cycle through weapons you have and other items you have as well, which is pretty cool, and it's kind of like GTA 5's weapon wheel in a way. The stealth system, on the other hand, is as good as ever, which I'm happy to say, since stealth is a big component of the Hitman franchise, and it's very rewarding when you kill your target stealthily without getting caught. Instinct makes a return, but is severely better than Hitman Absolution's Instinct. In Hitman Absolution, you could only use Instinct for a certain period of time before it has to recharge, and in some sections of the levels you had to use Instinct, so if you used it before then you were screwed. But in Hitman, you can use Instinct whenever you want, which is helpful, and Instinct slows down time, which is also pretty cool. And Instinct isn't vital in completing any mission, Instinct's just there to help you, and basically for beginners. You can also blend in to not get suspicious by anyone, which is good when you're in a tight situation. The mission design in Hitman is also a big improvement from Hitman Absolution. In Absolution, you had a very linear level design, which didn't really work for what the series had established before, and the gameplay didn't work with the linear design, so I'm glad that the mission design here is great and vast, and it's almost too big for its own good. In early Hitman titles, you had a ton of small to medium levels, but in Hitman 2016, we have 6 giant maps, but the lack of maps is compromised with how much stuff you can do in these maps. There are a ton of ways to kill your target, and there are a bunch of challenges you can do in the missions to get a higher level for the map. When you get a higher level for that specific map, you get multiple skins, starting locations, and guns. Planning makes a return with you being able to change your starting locations, loadout, and disguise. Speaking of disguises, they make a return here and are much better than Hitman Absolution use of disguises, since everyone can see through your disguise in Hitman Absolution, but here only a select handful of people can see your disguise. The game gives you 2 prologue levels before the main story, which tell you how to play the game and introduce or reintroduce you into the Hitman world, and it's a great way to introduce players into the new generation of the Hitman franchise. The first prologue level is set in a yacht party where you have to kill one target without dying. This is pretty simple and it's pretty fun. The colors, the conversations, and the kills you do are all amazing and fun overall. The second prologue level is where you infiltrate an airbase and kill your target. This mission isn't as good as the first one, but still shows the player how to gather intel and the variety of kills you can do in the game. We then transition into the first real mission in the game, which is amazing. You visit Paris and you have to take out not 1 but 2 targets in a fashion show. Having 2 targets adds an element of surprise to the player, and this is arguably the hardest mission in the game since there are so many people around that if you do anything wrong, someone will notice and then you're dead. So you basically have to perfect everything to beat this mission. The next mission is in Sapienza, and you also have to kill 2 targets in a giant mansion. But the mansion isn't the biggest part of the map because it's surprisingly the town. The town is pretty big, it can feel like a maze at times. The main twist in this mission is that you also have to destroy a virus, and this adds a whole new element to the mission since you're not trying to kill a moving target but a still virus. This mission is a good successor to the first mission and uses its maps to its fullest potential. The next mission is in Marrakesh, and I think this mission isn't as good as the first 2 maps. For one, the first 2 missions expanded on each other, having multiple elements in a good way. Paris expanded the map and added crowds, which isn't really in the prologue missions, and Sapienza added a new element in the mission design, which was to destroy a virus, but Marrakesh doesn't really add too much of anything. For one, this mission's map design isn't as good as the first 2, as the first 2 missions were open world areas for you to explore to your heart's content, but Marrakesh is kind of just a linear loop which sticks out as a sore thumb for the Hitman franchise. But it's still good overall. The next map is in Bangkok, and I think IO Interactive knew that Marrakesh wasn't what people wanted since the Bangkok map and mission is very similar to the Paris mission, with 2 targets both being in the main building, with 1 target being on the top floor and 1 target being on the bottom floor. I like this mission because there are a ton of absurd opportunities you have to kill your target. Like one of the many absurd opportunities, see you doing drums for a band for you to get close to your target. This is so abnormal for 47 that it's just so funny to see. Overall, this mission is pretty good and a big improvement from the Marrakesh mission. The second to last mission is sadly my least favorite out of all of them though, which is in Colorado. For one, this map is a lot smaller than the maps that came before it. Marrakesh also felt like you had less freedom, but at least you had more things to interact with, and it wasn't as small, but here there's none of that. Since this mission is very linear, there's also only a couple ways to kill your target, which sucks since the other missions gave you so many ways to kill your targets. The formula does expand though, with you killing 4 targets here instead of 2, and finding out about Providence, but this mission is a real low point of the game in my opinion. Luckily, the final level is a great conclusion in my opinion, which is in Hokkaido. This mission is in a top secret medical facility in the snowy mountains of Japan. This mission is great, especially in its design philosophy, but I think it suffers for it not being innovative enough. Each mission prior to this one expanded on everything. Even Colorado expanded on stuff with having 4 targets instead of 2, but here in Hokkaido it's just the same 2 targets again. But overall, this final mission is mostly good and is a satisfying conclusion for the missions. Overall, the main missions in Hitman are great with a few exceptions, making this one of my favorite campaigns in video games. There's also DLC in this game, which are just more missions in the same maps, but the maps are revamped, giving it a new style that a DLC should have. But it's just more of the same, so I don't think it's worth buying unless you're a die-hard Hitman fan. The awful saving system in Hitman Absolution is gone, and you can now save and load any save whenever you want again, which was a great move by IO Interactive. But saving and especially loading save files takes so long, even on the PS5, which I think is kind of ridiculous. One thing I wish IO Interactive improved on also was the jumping system. The Hitman series was never known for platforming or jumping in any way, but really you can barely jump over anything, which can be frustrating at times when you have to go around something just because the game will let you jump over it. Another thing I don't like is how you always have to have Wi-Fi to play Hitman. Now technically you can still play Hitman offline, but basically all the modes and challenges are gone, which is kinda disappointing. Well, I do like those NPCs in this game. They all feel real, and their animations, dialogue, and their manner is different. Whether it be by their culture or clothes, all the NPCs are different and unique. And you could tell IO Interactive put a lot of effort into making the NPCs feel real and dynamic. Contract missions returned from Hitman Absolution, and are basically the same, with letting anyone create a mission on a pre-existing map, but adding challenges for anyone to complete, basically having an endless stream of new content for players. You also have the inclusive targets, which basically are targets you kill, but the catch is that you can only have one chance to kill them. So if you don't kill them or you die, you can't reload a save file or anything. The target is just gone forever. On one hand, I like this since it really makes you feel like an actual Hitman with tension and stakes, but on the other hand, if you don't kill the target, he's just gone forever if you lose. So you're basically losing out on free content, and new players can't also do the missions, so they're gone forever for them as well. But overall, the gameplay in Hitman holds up greatly today, and is a big improvement from other Hitman titles. In the prologue, you see Agent 47 and Diana begin their work together in some of 47's training with his employers at the International Contract Agency, also known as the ICA. One of the ICA higher-ups is Eric Soldiers, and he doesn't like 47 very much, but after a little bit of pushing, Agent 47 joins the ICA. Fast forward a couple of decades and we see Agent 47 and Diana Burnwood working back at the ICA, carrying out a series of hits for a mysterious customer known as the Shadow Client. Eventually, all of the targets are revealed to be agents of Providence, being another shadowy organization in the Hitman universe. Providence is basically an organization whose existence and total control over the world affairs was thought to be a myth. So basically what happened was that the Shadow Client used the ICA and Agent 47 to kill Providence agents, making the ICA appear culpable and hiding his own involvement. The game ends with Diana being approached by a representative of Providence who requests that the ICA deal with the Shadow Client, and Diana makes a deal with them to know about Agent 47's origins. I know that sounds really simple, but that's because that's basically all there is to the story. I think the story is made like this since the story here just feels like a piece in a giant puzzle, just one part of the many that there will be. And I think this is kind of true when looking at the stories for the sequels of this game. The story isn't the prominent thing that people look for when playing a Hitman game, so the story isn't a big deal, but the story we got here isn't too good in my opinion. We get cutscenes after each mission to advance the story, but that's about it. No in-game dialogue, no in-game cutscenes, there's none of that. But you could like this personally since a lot of details in the story are up to your imagination. Overall, the story here isn't the best, but still works for the Hitman franchise. Hitman 2016 is the embodiment of everything IO Interactive wanted Hitman to be all the way back from 2000 with Hitman Codename 47. An action-packed thriller assassination game with a freedom to kill your targets in a multitude of ways. Hitman 2016 isn't all good though, with the always online problem being prevalent and definitely will be prevalent in the future, and obvious fixes that IO could have done. But that doesn't tame what IO Interactive have done with Hitman 2016. Hello friends, thank you all for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I truly appreciate it. This video took a little longer to make since I'm transitioning back into school, so expect videos to come out 2 to 3 weeks apart compared to the weekly uploads, but that gives me extra time to make the videos better and make them more polished. But that's kind of all I have to say here, so stay safe. I love you all, and the chosen one out.